We are live. For folks that are just joining us, we will hear a presentation from the Navy first, and then I will enable you to speak for the question and answer session at the end.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Hillary. Welcome, neighbors and community members. My name is Zoe Johnson. I am the Community Planning Liaison for Naval Support Activity Annapolis, which we're the home of the U.S. Naval Academy and your neighbor. And we want to thank you for taking time out of this beautiful fall evening to join us to learn more about this upcoming construction project, which I'm sure many of you have been hearing about for a while, as we were originally planned to start construction earlier in the year, but due to some construction delays are now just now beginning to move forward. So we're anxious to get you information tonight on the status of this project and the effects it'll have on parking and transportation, and to answer as many questions as we can. So before we get started, I wanted to introduce the Navy's team and then have the city introduce some representatives from the city that are joining us tonight. So as I mentioned, I'm Zoe Johnson, and I am joined tonight by Andrew Leverling, who is our construction manager for this project. And he'll give some of the presentation a little bit on more of the project details, as well as Maddie Flayler, who is our public affairs officer. On the city side, we're joined by Hillary Radovich, who's the city's ombudsman, who's been very helpful in helping us share information and coordinate aspects of this project with the community, as well as Marcus Moore, the director of transportation for the city, and Alderman Huntley. And I think there may be additionally Jason Prola from Premium Parking, who you may hear from a little bit later in the presentation during the question and answer session as well. So with that, I don't anticipate this meeting will probably go an hour. I know everybody's busy. We have a pretty compact presentation, and so we just really are, want to get this information out to you. So we're going to give you a project overview of including how the project is designed, as well as how it's going to be constructed in terms of its phasing, and what that means in terms of impacts on the parking outside of our fence line, as well as the mitigations that we've been working really closely with the city of Annapolis on to sort of alleviate some of the effects of loss of parking on street parking near some of your residents. We are also going to talk about some traffic pattern changes on some of the streets to accommodate the loss of the lane due to support the construction, as well as give you some specifics on the sidewalk alterations and then the safety and security measures that we're putting in place to support this construction project. We're going to touch on the vibration monitoring that will be installed to monitor the project, and then, or that will be used throughout the project to monitor vibrations in the surrounding area. And then we're going to have a question and answer session, and then leave you with our contact information and an update on how we're going to share periodic updates on this project moving forward. So I'm just going to start. As I mentioned, this is the project that we're embarking on is a perimeter wall replacement project for the section of perimeter wall that you see that extends essentially from King George down Wagner Street, and then turns at Hanover, and then continues to Gate 3 of the U.S. Naval Academy. The start date we anticipate is late fall, maybe early winter, likely a December timeframe. We do have to, you'll hear a little bit in a bit, that we do need to have at least 30 days of vibration monitoring underway so we can establish a baseline prior to construction. And we anticipate this project is going to take approximately 2 years. It will be conducted in 3 phases, as I mentioned. In the first phase, we'll start this late fall, early winter. Before I get started, or before I turn it over to Andrew, I wanted to give you a little bit of sense of the coordination that we've been working on over the last almost year, maybe 2 years, 18 months with the city of Annapolis. So this project, as you know, is right outside of our fence line, and you are all great neighbors to us, and we, strive to be, equally good neighbors to you. Where, we share a wall with the city of Annapolis as well as, your neighborhood. So we have been working really closely on a number of fronts with the city of Annapolis to ensure that this project, can be as least disruptive as possible, and also work through, permitting issues and traffic and parking issues as well. So and you'll hear tonight that we've been working on the parking outages as well as the mitigations and, financial compensation for the loss of revenue for paid parking in this area. We worked with the city on traffic flow alterations on those sidewalk on the streets. We worked with the city on this actual design specifications for, we will be reconstructing the sidewalk that's on the residential side of the perimeter wall. So you'll be able to enjoy a new sidewalk that's up to code, and has new granite curbs, and it will be re-bricked. And then we've worked closely on historic preservation consultation. So we'll show you a mock-up of the wall. It is a historic wall, and it will be rebuilt, with the approval of the state historic preservation officer. We had to coordinate an easement with the city for work within the right of way, as well as the footer of the wall extends onto city property. So we needed to work through that process to secure an easement from the city. And then we are also coordinating with the city with regard to the maintenance of utility access. There's a sewage lift station access, electrical panel at the corner of Hanover and Wagner, and it will be within the temporary secure perimeter. So we've been working closely to ensure that the city's public works department can maintain access to that utility panel. And then just lastly, we've been really, fortunate that Hillary and others at the city have been helping us on community relations and information sharing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Leverling, who again is our construction manager, and he will give you an overview of the construction project itself. Andrew?
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. I do apologize. Camera could not get it working here on my government computer with the military security. But thank you for joining. A quick project description. The perimeter wall that we share with you all along Wagner Street and Hanover Street, between, you may or may not know it, Gate 4 and Gate 3, those first two blocks, will be undergoing replacement. It's nearing the end of its lifespan right now, so in order to make sure it's got many good years ahead and gets a nice clean new wall out front, makes the appearance of the academy in Annapolis look better, we're going to be replacing the entire thing in that section. Along with that, we will also be replacing the sidewalk and the granite curbs, as well as some paving along the side of the curb there to tie everything back together. On this slide, you'll see the existing condition of the wall and a mock-up picture of what the contractor has built on our side of the wall, so they could get practice seeing exactly how everything's going to go together, all the different details. That has been closely reviewed by historic preservationists from the state, the city, the Naval Academy, and approved. So at the end of the day, this is what you will be seeing on the outside when we're all done. Obviously, this is a mini version, only a few feet tall, but you will be getting the full size, essentially replace in kind, to match the original historic wall that's there. As Zoe had mentioned, this project will be completed in 3 phases. Phase 1 will be kicking off late fall, early winter. Our goal is to give the residents and everyone in the area 2 weeks notice before we mobilize. This phase will be located at Upper Wagner Street. During this time, the sidewalk will be closed. There will be barriers to designate the construction zone from public access. Street parking will be closed on the residential side. 6 spaces will be closed. And traffic flow is currently 2-way. It'll be converted to 1-way towards Hanover Street, away from King George Street. Phase 2 will also kick off at the same time as Phase 1. This will be consisted of Lower Wagner Street and the upper half of Hanover Street, down towards College Avenue. Duration of this one will be late fall and into winter of 2024 through the spring of 2026. So phase 1 and 2 will start at the same time. Phase 1 will end first, as we're still finishing up phase 2. The impacts here, again, the sidewalk will be closed next to the wall. Parking along Wagner Street, 6 more residential spaces will be taken up there to allow for the one-way traffic. And then on Hanover Street, approximately 12 spaces will be taken up along Hanover Street on the Naval Academy side next to the wall. The parking on the residential side will still be open for use. Traffic flow, existing two-way, will be converted to one-way towards College Avenue. And finally, phase 3, once phase 1 and 2 are fully complete and we have reopened those areas, we'll be closing down for phase 3, which is between College Avenue and Maryland Avenue along Hanover Street. Duration for this is spring 2026 through spring 2027. Again, sidewalk closed, 17 parking spaces on the Naval Academy side. Along the wall will be closed. Again, residential parking on the other side of the street will still be available and open. There'll be no changes to the traffic flow. The existing one-way will remain one-way. So for neighborhood parking impacts, we've gone through the 3 phases and where parking will be closed during that time to help mitigate it. Along King George Avenue, or King George Street, sorry, about approximately 300 feet or 15 spaces will be converted to resident-only parking. I believe that's currently 9-hour parking, so that will be permit parking only for the residents in this area. Same thing along Hanover Street and along College Avenue. Those will all be converted to resident only, so you won't have to compete with anyone else in the area trying to take over those spaces or the 2-hour paid parking. Any access for the contractor will take place from the Naval Academy side. Obviously, setting up the barriers will be the first step, and you'll see some trucks and some workers at that point. But once we establish our barrier, all contractors will come in through the gate into the Naval Academy. Their storage and laydown areas will be within the Naval Academy, and the work will take place within the Naval Academy. So you won't be losing parking spots or street access to construction work and trucks.
Andrew, I think one important point on the upper right graphic is to show, which is a little bit small, I don't know if folks can see that on the screen, is that the areas of parking outage with each phase, as that phase completes, those parking areas will be reopened. So it's not all of the parking spaces for the 3 phases are not closed for the entirety of the project. So for example, when phase 3 starts, the parking areas that were closed for phase 1 and phase 2 will be returned.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
That's correct. So this was discussed before, but it doesn't hurt to keep bringing it back. Make sure you guys are all aware. For phase 1, like we said, the existing 2-way along Wagner Street will be converted to 1-way. You'll be traveling from King George Street towards Hanover, and then down Hanover towards College Avenue. Phase 2, same thing, 1-way from Wagner down Hanover towards College Avenue. Phase 3, no changes to Hanover Street. The existing 1-way will be maintained. Through all 3 phases, however, College Avenue will be converted to 1-way towards King George Street. So from the very beginning, when we start at phase 1 to when we're done with phase 3, College Avenue will be a 1-way street towards King George Street. So vibration monitoring is something that we've added into this contract to help ensure that we're not causing too many disruptions. So prior to mobilizing and starting any work, we're going to have 30 days of vibration monitoring. The monitoring devices will be placed on public property within the next few weeks. Still working out the exact details of that with the contractor, but there will be 10 monitors set up along sidewalks in this 2 block area. They're very small. We're working together to mitigate any impacts, any tripping hazards, make sure it's safe and off to the side so it won't be a nuisance to anyone. Um, we will use that 30 days to measure existing and typical vibration levels from trucks and cars driving by, trash coming for pickup, mailmen, etc., to establish a baseline. Then during construction, we will have vibration monitoring throughout the entire project. During that time, we will actually get notifications from that to let us know if at any point we hit a warning, which would be 95% of the threshold that we set, to let us know, hey, let's look at what we're doing, see if there's any feasible way to try to mitigate the vibrations we're making. And then we will get an alert as well if we ever exceed that. So we know to stop, check out what we're doing, see again if there's a feasible way to mitigate vibrations, to try to ensure the least disruptions as possible and least impacts on everyone. So for the sidewalk alterations, like I was saying earlier, the brick paver sidewalks and granite curbs will be replaced with new. It will match what's existing there in the historic style, but no longer will there be bumps and cracked and broken pavers, no more cracked and broken granite curbs. All of it will be new or replaced. Um, for safety and security, um, obviously it's an active construction site. There is dangerous equipment going on at all times. We want to make sure the public is safe at all times, as well as this is a military base. So there are security measures that we have to um, ensure that are prescribed to us by the U.S. Navy. So with that, there will be concrete barriers with fence along, and that is what will be outside of the sidewalk, closing off those areas we mentioned in each of the 3 phases. The 2 pictures below kind of give you a example of what it'll look like. They will be individual concrete barriers with a fence on them. There will be privacy screens put over it, so hopefully you're not staring at construction work going on all day, and can kind of hide that out of sight, out of mind.
So that concludes Andrew's portion of the presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Maddie Flayler, our Public Affairs Officer, who's going to talk about who to contact for more information before or during construction. And then she will facilitate the question and answer session. Maddie?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Andrew, for that important information. My name is Maddie Flayler. I am the Public Affairs Officer for NSA Annapolis. If you're not familiar, NSA Annapolis is the support activity over across the river. We are charged with, one of our charges is public works for the Naval Academy. So that's why you're hearing from NSA Annapolis personnel tonight and not Naval Academy proper. But we're all one team, one fight. So if you have any questions at all during any point in this process, you're welcome to contact me. That's my contact information up there on the screen. You can also reach out to Naval Academy Public Affairs. They'll probably route you to me, or one team, one fight. Again, we can all answer your questions at any point here. And then that number down below at the bottom of the screen, our command duty officer. If you were to have an after hours problem of some kind, that is the number that you could contact in an emergency if you needed to get a hold of Naval Academy personnel. We're going to talk in just a second about what the hours of this project are going to be, and you'll see that there aren't going to be off hours, after hours construction efforts going on. So I don't anticipate that there would be any issues for you after hours, but if there were to be, and I'm not in my office at that number at the time you need to reach someone, that command duty officer number there is your best option. Okay, we're going to do a question and answer session now. We're going to put up some frequently asked questions here on the screen so that if this is the question that you have, we're going to put your answer up now. And if you have additional questions or anything that's not showed here, I I think raise your hand, Hillary. Is that how we want to do
Yes,
this?
that's correct. So anyone who has a question, feel free to raise your hand and I will turn on your ability to talk. And also, I just wanted to let people know that I will email out this presentation to everyone who was signed up for this event, so that you have that information. So you don't have to sit there and write down all those phone numbers. I'll email that out to you. The first question is from John and Sandy.
Okay, I have a couple statements and a question. Statement number one, and I hope premium parking's on the line. They're pathetic. I have written, emailed, called. They don't enforce, and this will not work without them doing their job. Secondly, Navy, you guys built the parking garage across the way, and you had vibration issues. People complained on this side. Some houses even had some damage, and you told everyone to pound sand. So that's the other concern I have. The third question is, why don't you do it all on your side of the road? Because you have ample space, you have access points around around the homes, around the field, and behind the alley area. So I don't understand why you're impacting us when we have multiple people on this street, and including Hanover, that are older and would have difficult time probably coming in from King George. And it's really one phase, not phase 1 and 2, because you just said you're going to do them all at once. So that's my concerns and my comment that this will not work, especially with premium parking. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that comment. We'll take that note. I'm not sure if anyone from Premium Parking is on the line, but we'll take that note. As for your question about vibration monitoring, or about vibrations at the parking garage project, that is why one of the reasons why there's vibration monitoring included in this project. So we hope that will be a different experience for you. And I think, Andrew, maybe you want to talk about how this project needs to be accomplished, the safety barrier on the outside of the wall and why that's necessary to accomplish the project.
Not unmuting.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for the question. Understand that we're trying to have the least impact as possible, and we are taking up space. These photos and graphics that we made are only showing the impacts to you. Essentially, the same thing will be impacted on the other side of the wall as well. Part of that is the physical construction of the wall, having to dig down. The footers for the existing wall are actually original granite from the original wall that will need to be taken up. Those run up underneath the sidewalk. So physically no way to pull those out and get down to put new structural footers in to support a new wall without taking up the sidewalk in the process. Additionally, for safety, we obviously do not want people walking on a sidewalk on the opposite side of the wall as one is being taken down. Very, very big risk of safety there with, bricks that could potentially fall, especially if we tried to dig under and underpin to pull out any footers. There's risk of collapsed sidewalks. So the number one thing is really safety there is why the entire area needs to be zoned off, both inside the Naval Academy side and along the Annapolis side when this wall gets replaced.
And I just wanted to add one more thing on the question about the phases. While phase 1 and 2 do start concurrently, phase 1, when it ends, that section parking will open back up. So it's not 100% concurrent. It starts concurrently, but it ends at different times. And then phase 2 will be separate. John, did you have another question before we go on to the next person?
Yeah, on a follow-up. We have limited parking as it is. There's several rental buildings on on Hanover. And we're going to lose a lot of parking. And I don't know if you've even 17 spots is not going to work. And how is it going to be? How are you going to enforce the traffic flow? There's a huge impact. I mean, we love the Naval Academy. We look out on the field every day, but it's a big impact for all of us. And, there's multiple cars. I just don't see how functionally you guys are going to do this and not put us out for 2 years. And it could be a great amount of putting us out.
So,
Much more than the Navy.
So to address your parking question, so there will be as many spaces as are being removed will be replaced on King George Street. And additionally, there will be all the parking that you have now is open as paid parking for visitors, and that will be removed. It will be resident only and in your neighborhood. So just in the neighborhood that's affected, it'll be 100% resident only.
I'm sorry, one quick question. My wife had a question.
Sure.
So, quick question. How are you going to secure those spots on King George to ensure that only residents will park there? Because again, there is on our area, Park Mobile never comes around and they don't do tickets and they don't do anything to mitigate, midshipmen, people that are here for the boat show parking here. So I'm just trying to conceptualize what that's going to look like for us to be able to park there. And I have an elderly neighbor that really, it would be unsafe for her to park there every day and walk to her house. She's probably in her late 80s. So have you given any consideration to those people that aren't as healthy as us?
I can address those two questions. So on the enforcement, the King George is actually King George Street. That section is enforced by SP Plus, and we will have them out there regularly to enforce. And in the beginning, they'll do what we call targeted enforcement, where they're there every couple of hours for the first few days, so that people who are accustomed to parking there as 9-hour parking will get ticketed and they'll focus their enforcement there, and then they'll add it to their regular rounds. So that will be, like I said, a resident only there. And then for your disabled person, for your elderly person, if you can have them contact me directly in the mayor's office, if they are the parking that is on the street side, well, I can work with them to find a parking space. We can do designated parking spaces for disabled people through our state program, but have them get in touch with me directly.
Okay. Am I?
And then we've got a bunch of people waiting to ask questions.
I'm gonna
and our alderman wanted to say something, so if we could.
I'm happy to go after the other folks who have questions. Thank you for acknowledging me, Hillary, but they should go first.
Thank you, Alderman. Sean Poole, you're next. Oh, sorry about that. I just enabled the wrong person. There we go. Sean Poole, you're next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I have pretty much all the same concerns as that first guy. I don't believe that the parking solutions will be good enough. The people who live here are going to be hugely impacted, and this project is going to be 2 years minimum. I don't see that 2 years as likely at all. And it's just the fact that we live here. And we're already competing for parking. That you gave some okay solutions, but also I just don't see how they're really going to be enforced effectively. So that's pretty much my statement. And just one question for phase 3: will the turnstile at gate 3 be active, or is that just going to be shut down?
Andrew, do you want to answer that one?
That is one I'll actually have to check with security and follow up with you. I do not know of any changes that it will be shut down, but I will have to check with our security office here. I can reach back out to the city and provide that information after this meeting.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's pretty much everything. Thank you.
Thank
And
you. Sorry, go
just
ahead.
quickly to Sean and everyone online, my email address there down at the bottom of this slide that you're looking at. If you just send me a note there and ask to be added to the list so that I have your email address, we're going to send construction and timeline updates, additional information that comes out of this presentation tonight that we can't answer for you here will come that way. So please send me a note with your name and your email address so that I can make sure you're getting information as this project goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Bill Townsend is next. Mr. Townsend, if you can unmute.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. I guess my first question is, why do we need to do this way? I mean, it's kind of a baseline question. I mean, this is, I mean, I know the Naval Academy is different than the Historic District, but in the Historic District, we're about preserving things, not tearing things down. So I don't understand why, you can't just, do what we would do in our homes, and I have done with my home, is repoint the bricks and keep on going. So that's a question. Also, another question I have is how are you going to set the vibration threshold? You talked a lot about establishing the baseline. I understand that, but then you talked about percentages of the threshold, but you did not talk, or if you did, I missed it, about how the threshold would be set. 90% or 75% of X is whatever it is, but what is X, and how have you established, what process did you use to establish a reasonable threshold in terms of vibration that potentially can do damage to our homes? Certainly, when you all were doing the parking garage, that was a major issue in this block. And the constant banging on the pilings, did crack plaster and other things in this block, and you all basically ignored that. My next question is, so we all, I shouldn't say all, I'll speak for myself. I have people who come and visit. In fact, I had a person who came and visited me for about 2 hours today. They were able to park, in this particular case, they parked around the corner on Wagner Street, very close to my house, and they visited with me for about 2 hours. Now, this is a little side thing. My next comment is a side thing about premium parking. I get this person in and I can't even really welcome them because I have to go up to the computer in order to get a pass for this person to not get a ticket. I mean, it's a horrible system, We used to have, parking passes in the drawer of our kitchen where we just, get one out, put the license plate number on it and so forth, and hang it on the mirror. And now, you can't even welcome your guests in your home. So that's a side thing about premium parking. I apologize for that, but I'm taking the opportunity to make that comment about premium parking in their whole process. But the other point is, where are the guests going to park, and how far away will they have to walk, to get to our house to visit with us? Another point, which is I'm not sure, based on an answer that was given earlier about enforcement, about exactly who's responsible for enforcement, whether it's SPP Plus or it's premium parking, but it doesn't matter. There is no enforcement. So, I mean, people get to do whatever they want to do for as long as they want to do. I do see occasionally some tickets, but they come through here, at very irregular events. Enforcement is not something that's practiced in our neighborhood, at least, very well. My final thing is that the city has a habit, a long habit. I've been there 43 years in the same house, and the city has a habit of saying they're going to take things away from you temporarily and then never replace them. My example I'm going to use is the Hillman Garage rebuild, which was done very expeditiously. Kudos to everybody involved in that. It was on schedule and so forth. That was very, very good. However, we had to succumb to a process that took away our 2-hour free parking, and that which we had as long as I've been here, and replace it with pay to park. Okay. And I thought the idea was that when the garage was done, we'd get our 2-hour free parking back, and we didn't. So you all are talking about changes to the flow. For example, one way from King George Street down to Hanover and over to college and then back up college. Okay, what are you going to do? And what's the commitment to doing whatever you're going to do when this project is over with? Are you going to return it to the two-way flow? Just as an example of some of the things that you all are proposing to do that I'm afraid will become permanent just because that's the way the city behaves. Thank you.
I can address the question about the traffic flow. Yes, it will return to normal. This is just a temporary thing to help. The two reasons for the traffic flow are for safety and also to provide some extra parking spaces. We may be able to add some parking spaces temporarily on College to make up for some of the lost spaces. The answer to your question about enforcement is that premium parking does the enforcement within your neighborhood. But the area that is currently 9-hour parking on King George is SP Plus. And if you feel like they're not doing their enforcement, please let us know if you haven't seen them in there or if you're having problems with that. And we can continue to look at options as the project goes along. If you, once the project is started, and if you're finding that you can't find parking, please let us know and we'll see what we can do to address those issues. There were a lot of questions.
Well, on the SP Plus versus premium, I mean, there isn't much enforcement to be done on the 9 hours.
Well, that will turn into, that's what I'm saying, that area that was 9 hours that will now be resident only. SP will be.
Well, but my point is I don't know because I don't use that area myself. I park in the block, which may or may not be able to do in the future. Don't quite understand fully the implications of this project on any of our abilities to be able to do that in a reliable fashion. But enforcing a 9-hour parking zone is entirely different than enforcing a 2-hour parking.
Yeah, so it will
There's
be
no comparison, in my opinion, between the two. And so SP Plus has nothing to do down there, basically.
What they will be enforcing is resident only parking in the new zone that we're creating during this project. SP will be enforcing resident only, scanning license plates and ticketing anyone who's not a resident in that previously 9-hour section. And premium will be doing the same in your neighborhood streets.
But premium isn't doing that today.
Excellent. So I will reach out to them.
I think the first speaker, John, I believe his name was, made that point himself. So, we all have experienced the fact that people land here and stay here.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Townsend, but you had a number of questions that we haven't gotten to answer yet.
Okay.
There are a number of people waiting. So the big picture issues with premium parking, let's take up at a different meeting. This is just on this project.
So go to my other questions about
If I could butt in real quickly, could you just explain a little bit more of the details around how it will work to have SP Plus enforcing resident parking when residents are registered with premium? What are the mechanics of that?
We can get that information transferred over to them. That's what we did during the transition in the other direction. So that's an easy fix, but thank you for bringing that up. I'll make sure that happens. And Mr. Townsend, I'm sorry, I lost track. There was a question.
Yeah, so I asked
the baseline for
one of the questions that's kind of related is about guest parking.
And guest parking we hadn't talked about yet, so let me do some research on that and figure out what the best way to address that will be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm speaking only for myself, but I think
I think that's a very good question, and I want to make sure we get that addressed. But I can't give you an answer tonight on that.
That's fine.
There was a question about the baseline, not the baseline, but what is the top end for vibration?
Right, and how do you not about what is it? That won't mean anything to me if you tell me so many DVs or whatever. How do you go about establishing it?
Andrew, can you address that question?
I can speak to that, and I believe I have two here that I can answer for your questions because you were also asking about why it needed to be replaced.
Yes.
So for starting with why can't we just repoint the brick? I agree. We always try to keep the historic if possible and if feasible and repoint it. We've done that many times around the academy and to the wall in many places. In this place in particular, The foundation itself needs to be replaced. So simply repointing it is kind of putting a Band-Aid on it here. And, we want to make sure we give something that is going to last for, 50 to 100 years without having to do any major replacements or anything on it. And right now, the foundation itself needs to be replaced. So unfortunately, we can't just repoint the brick. That would be preferred if the foundation was not nearing the end of its life currently. For the vibration threshold, very good question. I know currently the reason we're doing the vibration monitoring period to establish that baseline is so we can get some real world data of what the typical vibrations are in this area. Currently, there's a federally recognized engineering standards for construction vibrations that provides thresholds. There's 3 different thresholds based on level of impact of construction. For example, pile driving would cause a lot more than general excavation or more than general construction, et cetera. So we're going to do this 30-day to establish a baseline of what is typically going on there and compare that to these thresholds. So if the typical what we get there every day is below kind of threshold number 2 from this standard, then we'll go based off of what the typical is. And so we'll get a baseline average of what's there and what spikes come by from buses or trash trucks, things like that would happen on normal everyday vibrations from cars driving on the road. And if we hit 95% of that, that's when we'll get our warning levels. So we're going to use we're not just going to lean just on the engineering standards. We want to compare that with real world data. And so we have not established the exact threshold yet until we get that real world data so we can try to minimize the impacts as much as possible.
All right. Well, thank you for addressing my questions. I guess I expect to still hear something back on what are guests supposed to do. As far as the vibration thing goes that you were just discussing, I mean, that doesn't necessarily sound unreasonable, except that, we have the experience, those of us in the block, of the parking garage, being built fairly recently and the issues that many of us here in this block had. And so the track record of the Naval Academy in terms of not damaging their neighbors' houses is not good.
So the next person with a question is Emily Burgess.
Hi, Hillary. Before we go on.
Yes, Marcus.
Marcus Moore. Bill, we didn't answer one of your other questions about the garage and the resident 2-hour parking. That is in effect for all the garages that we have for all city residents. And we can help you get that set up with premium parking for the Hillman garage as well as the others. No, that is.
I beg your pardon. I'm not sure I understand what question you're answering.
I think Marcus, I think Mr. Townsend was talking about 2-hour parking on street.
Okay, I thought it was the garage.
Yes.
No, on the street. We used to have free 2-hour parking in our block. You all took it away from us when you did the Hillman garage rebuild, and as I acknowledged, you did a very good job with the Hillman garage rebuild, but we didn't get our 2-hour free parking. And now, for example, when we have guests, it's really awkward, to be absolutely certain that your guest is not going to get a ticket. The first thing I have to do, like I did this afternoon, is go up to my office and get on my computer and go online and pay, for a parking spot for my guest. Okay. And I just am worried that you all say, for example, that you're going to restore the 2-way flow around the block, but you have a history of not restoring things that you've taken away as a city.
Thank you for your thoughts, Mr. Townsend. If we could go on. Sorry, we have a bunch of people waiting to ask questions. Ms. Burgess?
Hi, can you hear me?
You're next. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. I'm here with roommates. We are 3 young women. We've been here in this house on Hanover Street for a couple years. So I apologize in advance if this comes out with a tone, because I feel like it's been 3 years of screaming into the void since you guys switched us over to premium parking. My first question, I have 3 questions. I'm going to try to keep it brief. My first question is about how the city is going to change even temporarily, city code to allow better enforcement of parking, because premium parking does this thing where they ticket and ticket and ticket, but they will refuse to tow. I've been here, like I said, for a couple of years. I've successfully gotten one single car towed. I've spoken to police, I've spoken to premium parking, and apparently there's city code that talks about, when a car can be considered abandoned. Premium parking, if they come by, which is rarely, if ever, if they come by, they'll ticket for, I don't know, 4 or 5 tickets at a time. And I know these people, I'm watching these people come out, they're just throwing tickets on the ground. They're not paying these tickets. Premium is not enforcing parking. I'm curious if the city is able to change the code to make it easier to tow cars, or to make it easier to send collections, or to make it easier for premium to do their job. Because right now premium's not doing their job, and I don't believe that they're going to continue doing it during this construction project. So I'm curious if the city has any plans to help.
Hey, Emily, I'll jump in on that one.
Sure, thank you.
First of all, thank you. Yeah, you mentioned, I don't know if you guys can see me or not now. There you go. I'm standing in my kitchen making some meatballs. But first of all, yes, premium does not, in my opinion, adequately enforce, much less tow. But I will say one change to city code that we are in the process of making, and it's not enough, but one change is changing it so that currently it says in city code that towings have to happen within 1 mile. They can only tow to a lot within 1 mile of the city. I think that's kind of some old-fashioned thing, right? It's like a lot of our code, it's outdated. We're getting rid of that. It's mainly to address the problem around large vehicles, because there's nowhere within 1 mile of the city that will take things like motorhomes that are abandoned. So that is one little thing that we're changing already to make it a little easier for cars to get towed. But I would love to talk more about the section of code you're referring to, and hopefully we can figure out how to make that even easier, because yeah, you're right, it ain't happening the way it should.
Thank you.
I can address the code section part of that. The current code is that somebody has to have 5 tickets before they're towed, an individual or to a license plate. But in addition to ticketing, which is that if they don't pay those tickets, people are required to pay tickets and they are government enforceable. So if they don't pay their tickets, they get reported to the MVA, and they won't be able to renew their driver's license or registration because of those outstanding tickets until they're paid. So it's so that is happening. The 5th ticket tow, if that's not happening, I will reach out to premium and make sure they're enforcing the law, but that is the current law. And it's important that if we addressed that issue by taking that rule away, what would happen is that somebody who just made a mistake and didn't pay for their parking, or your guests or yourself, if you forgot to renew your pass, could get towed. And towing is a pretty serious thing. The only time we tow on the first ticket is when it's a safety violation, something like blocking a driveway. Somebody can't get in and out of their driveway, things like that.
Thank you. And I would never suggest towing someone who has 1 ticket, but we have the problem with the 5 ticket rule is that premium parking comes so rarely that it could take 2 weeks for someone to get 5 tickets. And then that's 2 weeks of parking that we are not able to access. So that's why I wanted to bring that point up, is that if premium were coming by 2-3 times a day, it would be easier to get those 5 tickets, but they're not coming 2-3 times a day. So we have large Sprinter vans parking and doing haircuts on our street. We have boats. We have people charging generators at the end of our street. Like we have seen some crazy things. So that's why I just wanted to emphasize the towing piece. But I'll move on to my next question. My next question is how the Naval Academy plans to enforce this with the midshipmen. I love being a neighbor to the midshipmen. We're all sponsor moms here. We love the mids, but we have had some serious problems with the midshipmen parking on our street. We've elevated this many times. Captain Bates, the chief of staff at the Naval Academy, about enforcing midshipmen parking. We have watched mids screech into a parking spot and run in through gate 3 trying to get to their curfew, before they're 6 o'clock at night, and then they leave their car there all week. And again, if premium's not coming by, they get a week of free parking. And I know these mids who have personally told me they're not paying it. And curious about what the naval plan to do with midshipmen who are taking our parking on Hanover Street?
Yeah, Emily, thanks for the question. You said you've elevated this before, but I will absolutely do that again. I'll take it back up to the superintendent's office and let them know that this is still a problem over there and that we're going into a period of time where it's going to be an even more impactful problem. So, you know, we can't necessarily go out there and ticket the midshipmen ourselves, but we'll absolutely make the concern known again and see if we can do a messaging campaign to the mids about following the parking rules around the city and especially outside our walls to respect our neighbors. So thanks for that comment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My last one, I'll keep it brief, is what kind of signage you're planning on putting up. We already have some problems right now with people driving up the one way, the wrong way, bird scooters driving up in the middle of the street the wrong way. We don't have a three-way stop right now where Hanover and College meet. And I guess if you plan to add stop signs and more one-way signage and exactly how you plan to make that extremely clear, because we have had many situations where, you know, we're talking near accidents with people driving the wrong way or not, you know, blind corners and things like that. So I'm just curious how many street signs you plan to add.
I know that in addition to the one-way signs, there will also be do not enter signs, marking the areas that are new one-ways. And also when they go up, the new signs will be flagged. I assume, I haven't talked, Public Works isn't on the call, but usually when we put up new signage, we flag it in addition. Marcus, have you seen the sign package for this project yet?
I've seen a draft. I think it's going into production later this week or early next week. We can share that as well with Zoe, that we can put it out so folks can see it.
Excellent. And if you find that there's problems once the signs are up and the new rules go into effect, let us know and we can look at changing that signage.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Lori Sullivan. Hi, Lori. Oh, let me allow you to talk. Sorry about that. There you go.
Come on. Are we? There we go.
Hi, now I can hear you. Hi, Lori.
Hey. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I absolutely agree with every single thing my neighbors have said thus far. And just to beat a dead horse, the premium parking does not show up and they don't enforce. And I actually do have a driveway that pretty routinely gets blocked and they don't even tow then. So just as an FYI. But I do want to shift gears in terms of, we're talking about vibration and housing damage. I'm actually as concerned as I am about that. I have children with a very rare disease that has caused one of them to go deaf and has the other two at very high risk for going deaf. So my really big concern, given that the front of my house is 22 feet away from the wall that's going to be constructed, and given the fact that we have single pane glass in our antique windows, is how are we going to protect our families from hearing damage, and what noise threshold is going to be, handled? How is that going to be handled? I know you mentioned dump trucks or garbage trucks or whatever. Well, they show up in front of my house for a whopping minute and a half max. And I think what you're talking about is sustained, repetitive noise. And I am deeply concerned about how that impacts my family and their health.
Lori, thanks for that question. That's a really good point. And I can't imagine having to have concerns like that. So I'm sorry that that's something that you have to think about. I'm going to let Andrew talk about the noise expectations for this project. I think that, Andrew, you go ahead. I might have something to add at the end, but Andrew, can you talk about the hours? Obviously are within the noise ordinance hours for the city, but can you talk about what we might expect to hear from this project?
Yes, to the greatest extent I can. Yeah, hours will be standard working hours, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. But obviously, your concerns don't go away just because it's working hours within the city noise ordinance. So I will let you know that I was not around during the parking garage, but I do know that required much heavier equipment, pile driving, much more loud noise. This really not going to be anything more than standard construction going on. A lot of this will be taken down in chunks on the academy side. You're not going to have a huge bulldozer out there all day long going. And then for the placement of the new wall going up, it's masonry being put in by hand. So a lot of this, you'll hear concrete trucks when we're pouring the foundations and infilling the wall, standard, backing up beeps for warnings. But I don't envision any extreme noises. Unfortunately, with construction, there is quite a bit of noise, and a lot of the beeping and hazards and alarms are there for the workers' safety themselves. So some of those are, federal OSHA standards that we can't just shut off. But besides that, we'll kind of, have to get back to you to see if there's anything specific, and we can include updates, in our updates that I'll be putting together that will go out to the community. If you add onto that email list of, at least give you a heads up of, hey, here's what we plan on doing in the next 2 months, and here's what we've done in the last month or two, and kind of at least notify you and give you a heads up of what you will be hearing or what you can expect to see and hear going on.
And Lori, if you send me a note and just let me know where you live in this zone, I can even try to give you a little more targeted.
I would appreciate that. The sad truth is that my kids who are most vulnerable have the bedroom facing the project. So they are going to be the most impacted of anyone in our family just by virtue of where their bedroom lies. And like I said, for all intents and purposes, the residents living on this street are going to be exposed to the same level of noise as the workers doing the work. So if OSHA requires that the workers doing the work need ear protection, so do all the residents living on this street, because for those of us who've never replaced the windows, there's no barrier. It's the same as, and like I said, my house is literally 22 feet from the wall. So I might as well be standing next to the equipment for all the difference it'll make. So if we can be a little bit thoughtful, I obviously have a unique circumstance, but that's not to say that you couldn't damage everyone on the streets hearing. And I can tell you firsthand what a nightmare that journey is.
Yeah, absolutely understand the concern. And if you send me a note, I will do everything I can to make sure you're informed about when things are going to be happening nearest to your house. And like Andrew said, I think that the loudest portion of the project will be taking down the old wall, and that's not the full length of the project. So I hope you don't look at those dates and say, oh no, that's approximately 2 years of loud noise right outside my house.
Okay, last question.
Sure.
Given that you're already going to be replacing sidewalks, as a gesture of goodwill, I think the neighborhood as a whole would be very appreciative of you replacing both sides of the street's sidewalks. Replacing the sidewalk on the side that you're currently planning on doing, no one walks over there. That's not where people walk. And in fact, most people walk down the center of Wagner Street and not down the center of Hanover Street because the sidewalks are so bad. So I know it's not probably been budgeted for, but I think it's something I would strongly recommend you consider as a gesture of goodwill for the amount of aggravation that you're going to put the neighbors through.
We'll certainly take that note. Zoe, I don't know if you want to jump in on the sidewalk conversation, but I do think that because the sidewalk is not adjacent to federal property, that presents a problem there. Zoe, do you want to speak to the sidewalk conversation?
Yeah, that is a tricky one. We are actually, it's very difficult for federal agencies to spend federal dollars outside of our fence lines. We are doing that in this case because of the impacts to the sidewalk, and so it worked well in that we are taking out the sidewalk and to put back in another city sidewalk, but a better one for you. But it wouldn't be. We wouldn't be. I know, I understand the gesture of goodwill. I would love to be able to do that as well, but I think that would be I don't think we would have a really hard time, appropriating federal funds for that reason. So we can take it back and look at that, but I can tell you it would be almost nearly impossible for us to do that.
Yeah.
Just because of
all I'm saying as
federal
a citizen
procurement.
is you guys are asking a lot of us, but where's the goodwill on the other side?
Just putting on my chairman of the finance committee hat for 1 second, I'll say that we regularly have situations where utilities, other government entities are able to not spend the money themselves. I understand how that's difficult, but provide the funds directly to the city of Annapolis, in which case then we can put forward a supplemental appropriation to spend it. And we do this all the time, specifically for sidewalk replacement, normally with Baltimore Gas and Electric, but I think that could be an easier way for the Naval Academy to do it rather than you guys hiring the contractors. And I'll just note, because I happen to know this number off the top of my head, the cost of rebricking 1 block of sidewalk is $120,000.
And just one final thing, Lori, back to your very first question about towing. You mentioned that you had your driveway was blocked and the vehicle was not towed. If that ever happens, if you call Premium and they refuse to tow a car blocking your driveway, please call APD.
Yeah, I've done that. Unfortunately, I kind of get this in a circular.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, if you do that, I would call APD and tell them I called Premium Parking and they refused to tow and I don't have access to my driveway.
It's not a refusal, Hillary, just FYI. It's we're going to get to it. And 2 hours later, when I still couldn't get out of my driveway, they were still going to get to it. So it's not an outright refusal. And then APD says, well, Premium says they're working on it. So it's a de facto refusal.
So I can check in with them. Sometimes that is the fault of the tow companies, that they don't have somebody available, but I will check in with them.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Because it's happened more than once.
Yeah, that should never happen. Thanks for your questions, Lori. The next person is David Smolsky. David, do you have a question? It looks like you're unmuted, David, but I can't hear you. Sorry, David, I can't hear you. I'm going to go on to the next person. If you figure out your audio issue, you can jump back in. I'm going to leave you in talking mode. The next person is Robert. I don't have a last name. If you want to unmute Robert, you'll be able to speak.
Yes, I think it's my question has already been answered more or less because the Navy said that they would not do the sidewalk. Are they going to repave the streets for one? Because Hanover Street is pretty rough as it is. And along with that, if anybody looks at College Avenue, you'll see that a lot of the paving has all been torn up, and you can see the yellow bricks underneath before. That could be repaved too. Why wouldn't you repave all 3 streets if you want to, get it up to snuff?
So I would just say on both the internal side, the city side sidewalk and on the streets, we do require repaving when a construction project damages or affects those streets or sidewalks. In this case, the work is all going to be on the Navy side. So I don't think that we'll have that impact on the issue with those streets and sidewalks. I don't think is impacted by the Navy work.
Okay, so
my
question would be,
you can reach out to your alderman who happens to be on here to look at city funding for those projects if those are due, and they may already be in the pipeline. I can check on that.
Yeah, my question would be, if you walk down Hanover Street now, you would have a hard time doing it because it's caving in just like the wall. So
the paving is?
Yeah, the paving that they've put potholes. I mean, it's not really potholes, but they've tried to fix it by putting asphalt in the places that have been rough and unusual. But seriously, the whole street needs to be repaved, and College Avenue for that matter, to King George Street. Just take a look, see what happens there.
Robert, if you want to follow up with me when I work in the mayor's office, if you want to call me or email me at the mayor's office, I can check and see
Sure.
where you are in the paving schedule.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's all my questions.
Does anyone else have any questions? It looks like John and Sandy have another question. Go ahead, John or Sandy, if you want to unmute.
Okay, yeah, thank you. A lot of the questions that I have been asked and somewhat answered. This is just in general, and it actually doesn't involve the Navy this time. It is the city, and it is the mayor's office. This was not really represented very well to the neighbors. I think early in the year we got something from the Navy, and I got some text from somebody who got something else from the Navy. We really don't hear from the city. We're like the forgotten little area. You guys have not reached out to us. We should have had our alderman. I know he's new, but I've never met him. He's never come by the neighborhood that I know. I work from home, so I'm here all the time. This should have been done with a focus group or something way ahead of time to address these questions so we didn't run into this, 30 days before they're going to start construction. And premium parking is part of the city's choice of how they sign this contract. I've reached to the mayor multiple times, complained about it, and never got a response. I think that one of his assistants finally got back to me, but I don't know whoever signed these kind of contracts with premium parking, but it affects everybody, and it's going to really affect this project because they don't do their job no matter what they say, and they are truly pathetic. And I don't know how they're getting paid, but until you guys figure all that out and get an enforcement that works, then this project shouldn't even go on because the communication has been piss poor. And that's just me. It's not on Navy side this time.
Thanks for your comments. Karen, you're next. Karen Riescher.
Because really, right, I mean, we never have before.
Karen, if you want to unmute, we could hear your question. Thank
Yes,
you.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, looking at the diagram, it looks like nothing is being done to the wall below gate 3 on the last block of Hanover, the dead end street. Yeah. Does the project extend down there or not?
Zoe, could you address that question?
Because it doesn't look like it goes below Maryland Avenue.
That's a great question. Thank you.
I think Andrew can confirm, but based on my understanding of the project, it stops at gate 3.
That is correct. It stops at gate 3 for the replacement.
Well, that's good news for the parking, but I'm surprised that they wouldn't extend the wall all the way down from the viewpoint of how it looks. But anyway, that's what I was interested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Bill Townsend, I see you have your hand up again. Was that just from the last one, or do you have a new question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I had to unmute, apologize. So I just wanted to amplify what John said about communications. That's certainly entirely possible that I missed something. I was totally unaware of this project until somebody came by here last week and slipped a sheet of paper underneath my doormat. And that's the only reason I signed on to this, because I knew nothing about it, had never heard a word about it. So the communications on this is suspect, although it is entirely possible that I'm the problem here and I missed something. But I'm just saying I had no knowledge of this until last week. The other thing is and this is maybe again is my fault, or maybe it's because of the way it was articulated. I totally missed the fact that the sidewalk that's being replaced is next to the Naval Academy wall. I assumed it was on the residential side of the street because, like somebody said earlier, nobody uses the sidewalk next to the wall. They all use the sidewalk or the middle of the street on the residential side. So that's just, there was unclear communication about that, in my opinion. And I'm glad that somebody asked the right question to get that out. So nothing's going to change for us. Our sidewalks are going to be just like they are right now. So I think you should stop saying that this is something you're giving to the neighborhood, because it's nothing, because nobody uses the sidewalk you're going to redo, so to speak, with granite curbs and new bricks. Nobody uses that sidewalk. Nobody. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori, did you have another question?
I did actually. We already know that parking is a challenge under the best of circumstances, especially in the immediate term. I don't know exactly what your start date's going to be, but I am foreseeing the hell of Midnight Madness and New Year's Eve and all the special events that we already struggle with, and how much more that will impact us, and wondering if there's a way for the city to take into account that replacing six residential spots with 6 residential spots that are a block or more further away from where they've been taken may not be sufficient, especially when we start adding some of these special events, and just kind of putting that on your radar.
Thank you for that. Yes, and I think that that's why we also are doing the resident only parking, so that the visitors to events should not be parking in your neighborhood at all.
And actually,
they're allowed to park in there, but
may I offer a suggestion, Hillary?
Mm-hmm.
For the neighbors who are impacted in these residential streets, one of the challenges that exists is you never quite know if it is a resident or a non-resident who's parking, unless you can read the tea leaves and see what their stickers are on their cars, because we don't have, the old parking stickers that said it was, parking district 1 or whatever. So it's hard to know always, like, is this just a somebody who lives 2 blocks from me who is a resident who went on vacation for 3 weeks and now and I'm stuck with their car, or is it a Johnny, or is it a mid? It would be helpful for the duration of this project to have resident stickers for those of us who live on these resident streets that are impacted, so that we can have a better sense of, like, are we actually able to get the parking that we think we are supposed to be accessing, or is it not being enforced well? Like, that would actually really, I think, help.
Yeah, that's something we could revisit if we find that it's a problem once the project starts. It's not something
it's a project. It's a problem now, Hillary.
I understand. But I'm, like I said earlier, I'm asking both companies to increase their enforcement in this area because of the impacts to you. So we have a number of mitigations already in place. So I'd like to try those first before we add in additional ones. But
if you
would definitely keep in touch
with me. Put in your back pocket, a residential sticker that would allow residents to recognize fellow residents would be helpful.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that.
Sure.
And David?
All right, am I on now?
You are.
Oh, excellent. I got a new computer and I couldn't figure out how to get the mics working. My one question, everything's been answered. One question, you mentioned that there's going to be parking on I call it the other side of College Avenue, because that's where we live, on College Avenue. You said there's going to be, one of the reasons for the one-way street, which answered my other question, why are we doing that, is you're going to possibly put parking spaces on the other side. Where are these spaces going to go? Because some of us have driveways, and if people park directly across from our driveways, it's going to be very difficult to get into our driveways. And also, what are they going to do about, what is Premium going to do about bad parking? People who, basically come right up to your driveway and make it very difficult to get into our driveways.
So the reason that I was saying we may add parking on there is because exactly for this reason, that Public Works wants to go out and assess what is possible on that road before we make a commitment to add parking there. So they will do the assessment on that. They look at the driveways that would be, obviously the parking spaces would be between the driveways, but they also look at the driveways on both sides and make sure there's enough clearance. On your question about people parking too close to your driveway, do you have red curbs painted by your driveway?
The paint comes off pretty quickly. I know I can call the city up and
Yeah, just put it in. If you go to the city website, you can just make a note in there that your red curbs need to be refreshed. They usually get out pretty quickly on that.
of course, then I'm going to beat a dead horse, and that's up to premium when they make a walkthrough. Or if you call them to come through and say somebody's, on the driveway, they often don't get out here. And there's a lot of people who park on the other side of College and drop things off, and I don't have a problem with that. But some people will leave their cars on that, in those on the other side of the street, the no parking side of the street for 20, 30 minutes at a time. And again, this is premium not doing their job or not responding when you call them to say that somebody's been over there for a while.
Gotcha. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. And our Aurora president would like to speak. You need to unmute and then you should be able to speak.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Hillary and Zoe. And I know Alderman Huntley has been a great asset to us. I just wanted to thank you for the communications, because people in Ward 1, I don't think we get as much communications as we'd like. And we're going to be working on that with Alderman Huntley on that one. I agree that the problems that we've had with premium, we have not had the same problems with SP Plus. But we've had a lot of contractors parking on the 200 block of King George Street. And I think we've addressed, I don't want to beat a dead horse about premium on that one. So, and we are concerned that you're going to modify the number of parking spaces that we're going to be able to, that the 9-hour parking is going to be able to absorb. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Emily Burgess, would you add something?
Yes, thank you. One thing I was thinking about as we're talking about the number of parking spaces, I'm actually curious how you came up with that number. A lot of problems that we're having here on Hanover Street is people who are not residents don't recognize where the natural parking spaces are. People who live here know, oh, if I put my side mirrors parallel to this person's fence post, I'm in the right parking space. But we have people who come in with big cars who park in the middle of what could fit 2 cars. So, a parking spot, making parking spaces for 6 cars might only fit 4 with the way some of these people park. I'm curious if the city has any plans to mark the sidewalks or to put lines. I know Charles Street has that. I know Murray Hill has that. I'm curious.
Oh, sorry.
Here.
Just to clarify, we don't ever mark individual spaces. In some places we mark beginnings and ends of parking areas. The reason that we don't mark individual spaces is that if we did mark individual spaces, we have to mark them for the maximum size. And there's actually less vehicles are able to park when you do that. I know sometimes it would be helpful because people, like you said, park very badly. But statistically, if we mark individual spaces, we would lose parking, not gain parking from that.
Okay.
But we do sometimes do what we call the L brackets, where we mark where a parking area begins and ends. So if that is an issue that we need to address there, let me know and we can look at that.
Yeah, no, I know we do have the L brackets and they're really well marked on College. They're not as well marked on Hanover. I know, I'm sure you've probably heard this before. It's like, but I know Charles Street has those markers for individual spaces. I'm just curious if you've taken into consideration taking away 6 spots, adding 6 spots might not mean actually 6 spots. So that's just a concern.
If somebody has those individual spaces, they did it themselves and that is illegal. So we don't do that.
All right, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to bring that up is the number of parking spaces might be tough. And my second question is whether or not, so we're talking about guest passes, we're talking about things like that. We live in between, unfortunately, 2 short-term rentals. We have an Airbnb on one side and a bed and breakfast on the other. And I don't know if you plan to, provide tags or stickers or guest passes for residents. I don't believe that short-term rental owners should be getting those passes because we have, I'm just curious how you plan to do that for short-term rentals.
So already what we do is they are not eligible for residential parking passes. The one exception to that is if you as a homeowner rent your home occasionally,
Okay.
you as the homeowner can still have a residential parking pass.
Okay.
But for Airbnbs, like full-time Airbnbs, they are not eligible for visitor passes or residential parking passes.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And John and Sam.
Can I actually jump in? Because I apologize, I have to leave at 8 o'clock.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah,
Go to
please.
another meeting. Sorry, normally I would ask, let any residents jump in first, but like I said, I got to run at 8 o'clock. So, look, bottom line on this, I got some questions too, but the bottom line is it just doesn't seem like enough. And I mean, I appreciate everybody being here at 8 o'clock in the evening, right? We all have things we'd rather do than talk about parking. I left Angela Alsabrook's rally to be here. But again, bottom line, doesn't seem like enough from the Navy. At best, dropping from Peter to pay Paul, because when we're taking away, or when we're making those spots that are currently 9 hours into resident spots, we're taking away from St. John's or from our businesses. And so, while I understand most of the folks on here are concerned about residential parking, I'm concerned about all of that. And I just don't think this is adequate. That's what it boils down to. So I got two questions. A, how can we move more of this onto the Naval Academy campus? I heard what you said earlier about not wanting people to walk on that sidewalk that we all know nobody already walks on. And you don't want somebody to get hit by bricks, which is valid. I don't want that either. But I don't understand how we're going from people shouldn't walk on the sidewalk to that we can't have cars parked in there. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so question one, right? How can we put more of this on the Naval Academy campus so that it has fewer impacts on residents? Question two is, this isn't really adding spaces. I mean, sure, it's adding spaces for residents, but again, it's taking them away from our other folks who need them in Ward 1. So how do we actually add spaces? Where are there places that are maybe on the Naval Academy campus, maybe that are, I don't know, any other spot? Can we evaluate places that maybe we can make some of the curb cuts a little bit shorter? Any number of things to actually add spaces. So question one, how we put more of this on the Naval Academy campus so we put less of an impact on residents. And please don't tell me the answer is security. Question two, how do we find actual spots to add? And I think both of these are really directed at our Naval Academy, our naval support staff, rather than at Hillary and the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Huntley. Zoe, you can jump in. I just wanted to say that the construction laydown, all of the additional space necessary for this project is already inside of the Naval Academy. What is outside is the safety perimeter. So I don't know that there are ways to move a safety perimeter if you can't move the project itself. But we did do the work on the front side of this to make sure that any additional space, anything we could move inside and get out of the way of residents, because we know this is impactful. Anything we can move inside.
Our residents who are here, because they're the ones who are the ones on the street, to sign you a hold harmless agreement for you guys, and then we can decrease that safety perimeter.
I'm sorry, I think I missed the beginning of that.
Alderman Huntley, I think you brought up some good ideas and options. I think we can sit down and look at those. I don't think we can really get into the mechanics of how it'll all work on the call tonight. The issue really is where that footer of the wall is, and so there is no way to replace the sidewalk. Has to be torn up. And we have to, as Andrew said, how those are historic footers. We were surprised by how large they are. So to be able to get under the wall, it requires us to be able to take out that sidewalk, and to do it in a safe manner and to move out the secure perimeter, it has to take up those parking spaces. There's
Does
physically
the-
no way to replace the sidewalk and get the footers out and then rebuilt without removing the sidewalk.
Right, but I think we all get the sidewalk's going to have to go out, and as we said again, people aren't. I walk on there all the time. People aren't walking on that sidewalk, so the sidewalk's not the concern so much as the parking spots. So, does the footer extend beyond the sidewalk, or does it end at the sidewalk?
I don't
So
know how. I don't know
I
how
can
far on you
I
can
can
answer
tell you
that,
right
Andrew?
there. Yes, the footer actually extends past the sidewalk in most places. It's about 4 feet from the face of the wall that it extends out under the sidewalk. So we have to have a barrier up, and in order to get to the curb to replace that curb, we have to saw cut some of the asphalt there, do some minor paving when we go to put it back in. But the barriers then will be where the parking spots are. There's no way to put those barriers on the sidewalk and undo it and take out those. So unfortunately, I agree with you. I wish that we could do everything from our side, but
We've been able to put up these barriers for the Department of Legislative Services building, and they go in between the sidewalk and the street, right? They're using the street, and we're able to keep the sidewalk up. I guess in situations where it is extending into the street, then obviously we got to make changes. But you just told us that's not all of it. So my answer is let's put the barriers not in the street. Let's put them between the street and the sidewalk. Let's put them so that we cannot take up those spots in the places where the footer does not extend beyond the sidewalk.
I think Alderman Huntley, we would have to see we'd have to have the city help us look at the width of the street to determine whether that, because the Jersey barrier has, I don't know, what's the width of the Jersey barrier, Andrew?
approximately 2 feet wide.
Yeah, 2 feet on the other side of the sidewalk, and whether that could still accommodate parking on the other side. It may be able to. I'm not sure how the city looked at that to determine. The other thing, yeah. So I think we have a lot of things to think about and can get some more information back out to folks. I think the city has some, we've heard some comments for the city to take a look at, and how in their enforcement and look at the parking and some accommodations and monitoring some of the mitigations that have been proposed and we're working on right now. So unfortunately we can't we're not proposing any changes from the Navy side right now tonight, but definitely we'll take the comments and the concerns into consideration. So
then I appreciate you addressing. I think that was my question too. But my other question around, at the end of the day, this is a Naval Academy impinging on city right away, city streets, and that our residents use. And as I look at it, like there's a little bit of mitigation, but we ain't getting anything for it. So again, I go back to how do we add parking spots? How do we not just say, all right, we're going to hurt our businesses who rely on people being able to park in those 9-hour parking spots and are no longer going to be able to? How do we actually add spots? And how do we make sure that, again, we're getting something, we're giving something?
Well, Alderman Huntley, one thing to keep in mind is that the Navy is paying for the lost revenue for those parking spaces. So it comes at a cost that the federal tax we're paying for it.
For the lost revenue to the businesses, which is what is significant. I think you guys know significantly more than the what it costs to add to the parking spots.
You mean with the lost revenue for the businesses for the loss of the 9-hour?
Yeah,
parking?
The 9-hour and the ability to pay to park in those residential zones. All of that impacts our businesses on Maryland Avenue, in our downtown commercial district, all over the place. And as we were talking about before, it impacts folks' ability to have somebody come by and drop off a cup of soup.
Sorry, my computer battery was dying. I had to plug it in.
No, I'm dealing with the same problem. I hear you.
So, yeah, I think we can continue looking at this issue and kind of work through it and see what we can do to accommodate and support each other. You know, the fact of the matter is, on the Naval Academy side, and with this wall, is it is a deteriorating wall, and it is posing a hazard. So we are, you know, trying to work our best to use, you know, the best construction method that's least impactful, and work through these issues with the city and the residents to, you know, accommodate this project. So that's, you know, that's where we are. You know, we really appreciate the comments and the concerns. You know, just wanted to mention, last year in February, we were, you know, beginning to think we were closer to mobilizing on this project. We did share some information and update internally within the Naval Academy. Some of that information, you know, went outside to the community. So we weren't, it wasn't intended to be, you know, we weren't ready for a community meeting. You know, and that's why we've spent all this time now preparing for that and working through these issues. So you haven't missed any communications from the Naval Academy, but we've been trying to make sure before we, you know, brought the project to the residents, that we had sort of worked with the city to address a lot of the concerns that we were anticipating. But we've heard more tonight. So we will, you know, take those into consideration, and we welcome you to submit additional questions to the email address at the bottom of the page, at our PAO email address, and we will get back to you with responses. And we will continue, you know, we can have another community meeting if we need one. We've committed to, you know, providing periodic updates. We can have another meeting, Alderman Huntley, with the city and the city staff to continue working through these issues.
Quickly, I don't know if I'm still on, but my wife had one quick question, and I do believe you're still a ways away, because you need to really address the neighborhood, and it's really on the city side, and the cure that they're going to make, working with you on all the issues that have been arisen. Again, the communication has not been good. I don't care what anybody says. It's been poor. And this is premature. I mean, this is a good start, but we're a ways away, I think, personally. But I'll let my wife ask her question, please.
Just real quick. So I love living downtown, and I love the academy. And it's not really a question, but it is a request. If we could please keep communication going, because I think a lot of this meeting could have been different if we would have had opportunity, I think mainly on the city side, to sort of discuss some of these things and be proactive, instead of, you know, not just having us all on here and talking about parking, which really this should have just been something to talk about the project. So I think communication is so important. If we can open up, I don't know, maybe even a specific channel just for this project with both the city, and I know that the Naval Academy said you will be sending us updates. I think that would be really great, because I think it's just been hard already, and it could get really ugly, but I'm really hopeful that it won't. So I want to thank you guys all, and I'm just hoping that we can have some open communication so that this just goes as smooth as possible. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I'll echo
Yeah.
again. Thank you guys for being here at 8 o'clock. Thank you for providing this communication now. I come back to kind of the thing I said at the beginning, which is, seems like the city's giving a lot, not getting a lot. And I'd like to work with you on addressing that, but that's where I stand right now. So thank you guys again. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for your great questions. If you have more questions, please email them to me. I was the person who emailed you the invite tonight, so you should all have my email address. So feel free to email me directly, or email the Navy through the information. I will send out the presentation that has their email address. And I did want to just add one more thing, which is that this project, like any project done in the city, the Navy has to comply with all the same rules and laws as any other contractor or project, anybody building a house or a business. And they have complied with all of our permitting requirements. having this community meeting was an additional thing that we asked them to do to get more information out to you guys, so that you would be aware of what's going on. And so I hope that it was helpful to get this back and forth sort of communication instead of them just sending information out. And yeah, please follow up with me if you have any further questions, and I'm happy to address them.
Thank you, Hillary. And we welcome additional questions, concerns in writing, and we will, I think we will seriously consider doing another community meeting at another point to make sure that we're sharing information and being as transparent, but also to, as neighborly as possible. So thank you all for taking your time tonight and sticking with us past the 7:30 deadline or timeline.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Zoe, are you still? Oh, no, you're off.